So it actually pointed out something here in this numbering section. I'll mention it because it's actually in 26:33, and it's going to be significant as we start the next chapter. Verse 23 says, "Now Zelophehad, the son of Heber, had no sons, but had daughters, and the names of the daughters were Zelophehad were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzan." And so they actually got. Now it's interesting. Remember, they're numbering the men of war, right? In the families and the men and the son and the son and the you have these women named. And why is that? Because now it's become significant. So this sets up actually the next chapter. And it probably kind of all happens simultaneously, but you can't write it down simultaneously because they're telling two different stories. Chapter 27 says, "Then the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Heber," the same thing, said it literally repeats the verse there, saying that he didn't have any sons, he had daughters. And he just pointed out that this is about inheriting the land, right? And so because this is not for going to war, this is for inheriting the land, this guy doesn't lose his inheritance just because he had daughters. His daughters inherit it. So chapter 27 from verse 1 through verse 11 discusses that. And so God told them in verse 6, God says, that they get their inheritance. And verse 8, it says, and so this is actually the inheritance laws that if in Israel, as they're coming into the nation, as they're coming into the land, that if a man in this particular case only had daughters, those daughters inherit for his family just like a son would. So, and it talks about that. And that ends in verse 11. And then the next thing we have is actually where Moshe is going to die, and Joshua is going to get anointed the next leader. So we're going to start there without going through all the numbering system, if that's okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Then the sons inherited. Yeah. It was only if the sons can carry on the family line, the inheritance and the family name, then they inherit it. So
what would happen to a daughter that, per se, never got married or something?
Well, that was almost unheard of. That's like almost not even a possibility at this point in history. I mean, their whole goal was to get married and have a family. And so it was, that didn't really happen.
Okay.
And it covered, the inheritance law covered that later in Torah, where the land would revert back on 49 years.
Okay. But basically this. You're talking about, yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, these daughters did literally inherit it, and they acknowledged it, and it would go back to them. Yeah, I mean, they inherited it just like a guy would, but because he didn't have any sons. So if he had one son and three daughters, the son inherited, he carried on the family line. But if here's where it gets critical. If he's the only son of this man and he dies, then it would have shifted, and that's what this section is about. It would shift to the daughters and they would carry it on. In other words, the whole idea was to carry on the family name.
Okay.
And the father's name of the people who came into the land.
But it opens up a whole different set of possibilities. Like if those daughters are married, they're carrying somebody else's inheritance.
So that it comes into down the line, it keeps going back to the original family after 49 years. It keeps going back to the original family. Even if they sell the land, it still keeps going back. So it all ultimately recycles and gets resorted. Thank you. Good question, though. Go ahead and read 12 through 23 in chapter 27.
Joshua to succeed Moses. Then Then the Lord said to Moshe, go up to the mountain in the Abarim range and see the land I have given the Israelites. After you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people as your brother Aaron was. For when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin, both of you disobeyed my command to honor me as holy before their eyes. These were the waters of Meribah, Kadesh in the desert of Zin. Moses said to the Lord, may the Lord, the God of the spirits of all mankind, appoint a man over this community to go out and come in before them, one who will lead them out, bring them in, so the Lord's people will not be like sheep without a shepherd. So the Lord said to Moshe, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, lay your hand upon him, have him stand before Eleazar, the priest, and the entire assembly, and commission him in their presence. Give him some of your authority so that the whole Israelite community will obey him. He is to stand before Eleazar, the priest, who will obtain decisions for him by inquiring of the Urim before the Lord. At the command, he and the entire community of the Israelites will go out, and at his command they will come in. Moshe said to the Lord, Moses said to the Lord, commanded him. He took Joshua, had him stand before Eleazar, the priest, and the whole assembly, then laid his hands on him and commissioned him as the Lord instructed Moshe, through Moshe.
Amen. So that's where basically he's telling him, put Joshua in front of his name Yehoshua, put him in front of the whole congregation of Israel, anoint him there so that they know he has authority. He is the next leader. He's the one that's going to take him into the land. Go ahead, right there in the back.
I see in verse 20 when it says, now I don't know if I'm seeing it right, but it looks like it's italicized.
Yeah.
And it says, and you shall give some. So was that added in there, some?
It's just to make it flow because it doesn't flow out of the Hebrew. Actually, what it's saying is give him authority. Give him your authority. He didn't lose his authority, but basically it gave him, and that's a good point. So he didn't give him part. Okay, you can only have part of the authority I got. The whole point was he has exact same authority with Israel or over Israel that Moshe had. I think a very interesting thing here is where Yahweh describes what happened, why he keeps reminding Moshe why he's not going into the land in verse 14. For in the wilderness of Sin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to, reads a couple of different ways, like keep me as holy, to lift me as holy, to hallow me, to show me as holy at the waters before their eyes. These are the waters of Meribah, which means bitterness, at Kadesh, and it's Kadesh Barnea. So very interesting that, and he had said this once before. God says, you did not honor me as holy. What did Moshe do wrong? Remember, this is about the rock.
Yes.
This is about the rock and the stick.
Yep. It's the way.
Okay. God said, speak to the rock. He hit the rock the first time. He said, told him strike the rock. He struck the rock the first time. The second time he says, speak to the rock. Who is the rock? Do a word search. Blow you away. All through the prophecies of Isaiah and Jeremiah, especially Isaiah. I am your rock. There is no other. And just boom, 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 boom. And you see Yahweh and Yeshua as one there specifically, because over and over and over, Yahweh says, I am your rock. I am your rock. And then Paul talks about, it's like, the rock that followed them was the Messiah. It's like, and so it's the physical presence of God. Now, what's interesting is, why does God keep saying here, because you, Moshe, dude, you didn't honor me as holy? Why is he saying that? I mean, think about it. It's like, you said speak to the, he disobeyed. Why isn't he saying you sinned? You didn't honor me as holy? Do you get what God's saying? When he instructs us of something, honoring him as holy means following his instructions. Because when we do it another way, we're doing it our way instead of doing it your way instead of Yah's way. I love that rhymes in Southern. So quit doing it your way and start doing it Yahweh. That's the way it works. Okay? But it's interesting from his perspective, when we don't follow the instructions, we're not honoring him as holy. That's actually pretty profound. And I think I've shared with you before the results of that. Today, I mean, when he instructs us of something, we're just looking, well, speak to the rock, hit the rock. I hit it the last time. I remember, and years ago in the churches, like people would say, well, it's because he said, must we bring it? He missed the whole point. He did say that, which was wrong. He was actually, but that wasn't the problem. God said the problem is you didn't honor me as holy because you did it your way. And so water from a rock is a picture of salvation. Water, living water, which means flowing water, is a picture of, if you're in the desert and you don't have living water, it means flowing water that you can drink. You can't drink stagnant water in the desert. It's poison, okay? Virtually all still water is why Psalm 23, he leads me by the still waters. We think, well, okay, that's so cool, and they're going to let the lamb drink. No, it's an extremely dangerous place in the wilderness, in the desert. Still water is where a stream has come down through the desert and has stopped flowing and has left a pool of water. You know where most people get killed in the desert? By far in Israel? By water. They drowned in the desert. Happens all the time. People get killed over in Jordan at Petra all the time. When it rains, it can rain 20, 30 miles away, and you get this wall of water coming 120 miles an hour, 20 feet high. It just wipes out whatever's in its path. I met somebody who actually got caught in one in Jordan, specifically is what made me think of that. In the trench, the wadi that leads down to Petra. And spent, I don't know how many hours, managed to grab a limb that was growing out the side of a root or something, and hung on for like an hour or so while this torrent went by. If it hadn't been strong, a bunch of people just get killed. The most dangerous thing in the desert is a still body of water. That's why God says, look for living water, flowing water. That's what he is. So it just changed that whole picture. So when Israel today looks for living water, salvation, where do they go? Where does Rabbinic Judaism go? They study the Torah. And they stop right there. They study Moses. Moses said, Moses said, Moses said, Moses said, and the rabbi said about what Moses said. Okay? They study the Torah. And they miss the Messiah, who is the living water. He says, out of me will come, I'll give you this water and you never have to drink again, and then you'll flow rivers of living water. And then in the millennium we see him, out of the temple where he's teaching living water. Okay? And so Moses messed up the whole picture of salvation, quite honestly, with a simple doing it your way. And by the way, it was based on attitude, flesh, aggravation. He was frustrated with it. He's completely frustrated with him. I get it. Probably why God didn't strike him dead is because he was very frustrated, and so he got grace there. It's important I think this points out the importance of being obedient. Over and over we say our obedience to Yahweh is an obedience to Torah, obedience to, and literally the word means instructions of God. Our obedience to the instruction of God is not for salvation. And it's not just, we do get blessings if we do that, because if you do it God's way, you're going to be blessed, right? But it's not even for that. It's simply right here. It's honoring him as holy. And when we do that, he blesses us, because he's already said, if you do this, I'm going to bless you. It's like, it's done deal. It's spoken. It's gravity. It's there. Okay? You jump off the building, you're going to hit the ground. You're not going to float up. I don't care what you think. I don't care who you pray to. It's not going to happen. It's just a rule. And these are the same way. You do these, you're going to be blessed. You do my offerings, you do the tithes, you do that, you're going to be blessed. It's just like gravity. It's already in place. You don't have to worry about it. I used to picture God in heaven, if you grew up like me in the Baptist church, either throwing lightning bolts or halos. The good people got halos, the bad people got lightning bolts, right? And I was like, man, he's really busy with all these billions of people around the world, handing out these things. He's sitting back. You don't have to do anything. He spoke it into existence. And when we realize that, it changes everything. He spoke it. And so it is. It's up to us where we walk. And so that's why he wants it to come from our heart, because true obedience can only come from our heart. And so when it flows out of our heart, we're going to desire to be obedient, and we're going to be blessed. But we're also going to see, and the cool thing about the Torah is when you start seeing this, you start seeing the Messiah in the Torah. And you also start seeing the Torah in the Messiah. And you realize that this is not two different books, two different worlds. This is the written Torah. This is the living Torah. This is where he wrote it on stone. This is how you walk it in your heart. Yeshua comes, he is the Word made flesh. What word? This word, Torah. Not some other word. This is this word. Okay? He was with God in the beginning. Everything that was made by him and through him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Who was that? They're one. It's not separate people. It's Yeshua, physical, and the physical. He's there in the garden. He's all through Scripture. And then he comes in the flesh to show us how to walk. How do you do that? Let me show you. But I don't know. Watch me. I'll show you how to do it. This is the Word made flesh. That's who Yeshua is. And so all we're doing, we're not trying to do anything about it. We're not trying to prove anything. We just want to understand what the Word is that Yeshua is walking out when he's walking. If you don't understand the Word, half the stuff he's saying and doing, we're not even going to see it. But it comes so significant when we see what it is. I think that's part of why the Torah is so important. So I'm going to stop there because A, it's getting late, and 2, we're at a stopping place. And the next thing that happens for several chapters is actually the sacrifices. And I'm going to just show you what's there, and then we'll stop there.